What's up, guys? Stacy here from Becoming Financially Fit, and today we have a super interesting topic to talk about. We're going to be talking about how Warren Buffett just disclosed last night that he has sold all of his stocks in Airline, and that's going to be the top airlines in the U.S. That's going to be United, Delta, American Airlines, and also Southwest. So we're going to get into all those topics today. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell to be updated anytime I post new content, because when current events like this happens, I'll be making sure that I put out content specifically for you guys so you're aware of all things going on within the market. So without further ado, let's get into the content. So if you guys have never heard of Warren Buffett and you consider yourself an investor, you must have been sleeping under a rock for the past 50 years, because not only is he one of the most highly regarded investors to ever live, but he's also one of the top 5 wealthiest individuals in the entire world, with a net worth of, I want to say, around $90 billion, but it's rapidly decreasing because of everything that's going on within the markets. And as you guys have seen, within the past, let's say, month and a half, the markets have decreased a lot, especially in some of these industries that we're going to talk about, specifically the airline industry, which is down massive amounts over the course of the past couple months. So we'll get into all that, but just to give you guys a little bit of background on Warren Buffett, he's the CEO of the company Berkshire Hathaway, and they're pretty much an insurance company, but they invest in a bunch of different companies. And what they do is they go for more of a value approach. They like to invest in companies that they think are a little undervalued and also pay really, really hefty dividends. So some of the companies that they invest in are like Coca-Cola or AT&T or the airline industries. They also invest in the financial industry, the banks. All of these companies that pay a hefty dividend, and there's typically little to no risk. He's looking for companies that are, like I said, undervalued, that have a good upside, but he's not really worried about the upside. What he really wants to invest in is companies that pay a dividend on a consistent basis. So a couple weeks ago, when the markets start to crash, the first place a lot of investors started to look was Warren Buffett. More specifically, what is he going to do in the market when he thinks that things are undervalued? Because a lot of people were saying, hey, the market may be at its bottom, but they weren't really sure. And an investor like Warren Buffett, once he makes a move in the market to, let's say, purchase a company or several companies within a specific industry, then people know it's safe to go in and start investing. But what did he do? He didn't purchase anything. He just sat on the sidelines. And it was kind of weird, because usually when things like this are happening, a lot of companies are undervalued, and you would expect a big company like Berkshire Hathaway, specifically Warren Buffett, to come in and take up one of these companies. But he didn't do that. Instead, what he did was he actually sold a portion of his investments in Delta and Southwest, and he did this for a really, really specific and important reason. I'm going to show you guys that reason right now. So what he did was, since he owned more than 10% of those two particular companies, he sold just enough stocks in each one of those, in Southwest and Delta, to get below that 10% marker. And why is that important? That's important because anytime you are an investor and you own more than 10% of a particular company, you have to file forms with the SEC saying that you're either buying or selling a certain amount of a security. And he didn't want to do this, because when he's buying and selling, he's doing it in bulk. And more specifically, when you do this in companies like Southwest and Delta, that says one thing. Usually you're known for buying, but now you're trying to get below that mark. So you may want to sell some or all of a particular position without letting the public know. So that's going to be really, really important when we move forward. But that was in early April. So things are starting to set up. We're now a month out, and they actually just held the shareholders meeting. So now we're going to talk about how that move in early April panned out to now. So now let's fast forward a month in time to the annual shareholders meeting, which was held virtually for his company, Berkshire Hathaway. There are a bunch of analysts on the call, and one particular analyst asked a question. He said, Warren, did you sell any of your shares within the airline industry? Or if you can give some specific examples, what were they? And he let that analyst know that not only did he sell from the airline industry, but he sold all of his holdings in Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, and United. Literally every share he had, he sold out of it completely. like I was saying before, he's known for being a value investor, going in and buying companies that are undervalued, making a huge profit on the upside, and also collecting some dividends on the way. But since these companies are going through massive troubled times due to the COVID virus, they are not making money at all. And they also stopped paying their dividends. So not only are these companies decreasing massive amounts in terms of share value, but they're also not paying dividends. So there's literally, at this point, he thinks there's no value in those companies, and that's why he sold out billions and billions of dollars worth of shares in each of those particular names. So now, what does this mean for the airline industry as a whole? Well, if you couldn't see by now, something is going terribly wrong. And that's specifically because a lot of individuals either are not allowed to either leave their home or fly, or the airline industry had to cut back on 90% of the routes that they're doing. So, for example, when I was going back home from New York to Ohio before the whole pandemic, it was a one-way flight. The flight was about an hour. I got into the airport. It was good to go. When I was coming back after the pandemic had, kind of blossomed, I tried to get a flight from Ohio to New York, and I had to do 4 layovers. That means that they cut pretty much all of their routes and their service to certain locations because they weren't profitable in the first place. They were just doing them because they had the volume and they could cover it up. But now these companies, and I'll give you some specific examples just so you can know how bad things are. Delta recently released in their earnings call, I want to say a week or two ago, that they were doing $100 million cash burn. And that means that they were losing about $100 million a day, every single day, just to keep their doors open. So when you see things like that from the airline industry and also the CEOs coming out and saying, hey, it's going to take not only a year for us to recover, but it's also going to take 3, maybe even 5 years for us to get back to where we even were before all of this happened. When you start to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, you kind of see that, hey, it's not looking good for the airline industry. Some things that I'll give you as stats and points for this particular year is Delta is down 60% on the year, and that's just from January 1st to May 1st. American Airlines is down 62%, United is down 70%, and Southwest is down 47%. So now you have to think, these companies are down massive amounts compared to the broader stock market, and it doesn't look like they're it's getting better anytime soon. So as an investor, what should you do? Me personally, I think that the airline industry and a couple of the major names, especially some of the smaller guys in that airline industry, are going to go bankrupt. And flat out, there's no way they can sustain this level of cash burn and still continue their operations. It's just not profitable. And if they keep continuing to spend this money day after day after day without business, because no one's flying at the moment and they still have to put up with salaries and paying their pilots and doing all the maintenance and repairs on these airplanes and parking them and terminal fees, there's no way they can survive. So I think you probably will see some of these airlines go out of business, and I think it's just a matter of time. So now, when you think about investing in these companies, do you think that they've bottomed out? Me personally, I would say that some of the companies may have bottomed out in terms of share price. So me personally, I think it's a good time to get into some of these companies with good balance sheets, with a lot of cash on hand, because they are spending a lot of cash. And you can probably read some articles to see that some of these companies have drawn down on their credit lines from banks because they need this cash on hand. So do I think that the industry as a whole will change within the next 3 to 5 years? Definitely. There's going to be some new names, I would assume. There's probably going to be some mergers, and there's also going to be bankruptcies. So what does that say for you as an investor? I would say do your research. This is going to be a rough time for the airline industry, and I don't think it's going to get better any soon. So if you're thinking about getting in right now, there's a huge risk to it. So I would definitely say do your research. Am I going to get in? I may get into one of these companies, but I'm not sure yet. Well, when you have a person like Warren Buffett actually selling all of his stock in the entire industry. So that was just a quick guide of what Warren Buffett did within the airline industry. And I tried to give you guys the whole timeline of when he why he initially purchased those airline companies to, get the capital appreciation because he thought they were undervalued, and also collect dividends. when they stopped paying dividends and they crashed, so much, why he eventually decided to sell those companies. And for future terms, because the market as a whole is not looking great, the rationale for the normal investor. So if you guys like the content that I'm putting out, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you like the video that I put out today, make sure you give this video a like. And also don't forget to drop a question below if you have questions about anything that I discussed today. I try to answer every question, and I'm going to try to keep putting out more content for you guys so you can stay updated on the markets. But in the meantime, that was Becoming Financially Fit, and this was the coverage of Warren Buffett and him selling off from his share of the airline industry. So see you guys soon.